Okay, I'm Thomas Fay with the Center for the Divine Will in Tennessee. Today we're going to talk about the prime motion of God and how the soul who lives in the divine will also works with God to give prime motion to all things in the universe. And in effect, we can also add to that whatever God does, the soul united with Him in the divine will and in possession of the divine will also does the same things that God does. He does them with God, as God does them. Now this diagram I have here is labeled eternity, a great circle of eternity. And God dwells in this great circle of eternity. That's His home. And His divine will, of course, which is His very essence, also reigns and dwells within this great circle of eternity. Today we're going to speak about how God is the prime mover of all motion. Therefore, we're going to make this circle into a gear. Now, I'm not going to draw all the little teeth on the gear, so use your imagination that this is the main gear of a machine. And so this main gear turns, all the smaller gears that are attached to it, they also turn at the same time. And even the gears that are attached to another gear that's attached to the main gear, it also turns with the turning of the main gear. Now, St. Paul says, it is God who works in you to will and to accomplish. And he was speaking to the people who are still living in the human will and who are now available to the sacramental system of the Catholic Church, or actually in anyone in any part of the world, even if they don't know about Christianity. All people in all times up to the time of the kingdom, which is now coming, all operated in the fashion that I'm about to tell you now. So as the main gear turns, then the human will can will. St. Paul says it is God who works in you to will. So if you will to do an action, then God gives you the power to will, and then He gives you the power to carry out the action that you freely chose to do. Now, if you chose to do a good act, for example, your duties are done and you have some free time and you want to go visit the Blessed Sacrament, then that good, pious act of visiting the Blessed Sacrament is a choice that you made with your free human will, and God gives you the prime motion to carry out the action of going to the church and kneeling before the Blessed Sacrament and visiting Him. But at the same time, since we're all dependent upon God our entire lives for our existence, and no one can move unless God gives them prime motion to move, and Jesus said, without me, you can do nothing. Therefore, if we freely choose to offend God, then He has a choice of letting us do that, or changing the circumstances so we can't do what we intended to do, or to take our life away from us. But if He chooses to let us to keep on living, which He does almost all the time, of course, then even if we choose to do a bad act to offend God, He still must give us existence. He must conserve our existence, and we cannot do anything unless He gives us the prime motion to carry out the act that we wish to do, even if it's a bad act. So if someone chooses to use the human will, God gives them the power to will to do something evil, and He gives us the power to carry out the action that we will to do, and someone may rob a bank, defending God and offending his neighbor. But still, God gives us the freedom to do that. At the same time, He gives us the prime motion to do what is wrong. So we can do either good or bad acts because of the freedom of our human will. And St. Paul says it is God who works in us, or you, to will, and then He gives us the prime motion to carry out what we will to do. So if I want to pick up a glass of water, I don't have one here, but it's an imaginary glass of water. if I will to pick up the glass of water, then God must give me the prime motion even to will to do that. And then he gives me the prime motion to move my arm, and pick up the glass of water and drink it. So the entire action requires that God's given us the prime motion for the entire action to accomplish what we will. Now this is the way it's been ever since the fall of Adam and Eve. The only exception before Luisa Picaretta was, of course, our Lord and Our Lady while they lived on earth. They lived in the divine will, and now that God is calling us to live in the divine will, because the fulfillment of the Lord's Prayer is being taken, it's in operation now. The will of God be done on earth as it is in heaven. And so we're going to erase this part, we're going to erase this part, and redraw it the way it was with Adam and Eve in the beginning, and the way it is becoming to humanity, coming to us at this time in the history of the human race, with the coming of the kingdom. Okay, in the divine will, in heaven, where the will of God is done, as it's done in heaven, as it's done in the Holy Trinity. So we're going to do the will of God as it's done in heaven, and we want to do it on earth to give God that incredible glory. So we're going to draw a picture of the human will and the action that comes out of the humanity of those who possess the human will. And so this human will and its act are now in the circle of eternity, and the human will acting in the divine will is fused with the divine will. They're welded together, they're merged together, they operate together, and they do the same thing at the same time. But it's now God who acts in us freely with his own will, because we have given our will over to him in complete submission. We have fused our will in his will. And so the action that comes out of us will no longer be either a good human act or a bad human act. It will now be a divine act. And because it is a divine will that's operating in us to do a divine act, it's not only divine, it's also infinite and it's eternal. So we have divine, we have infinite, and we have eternal. These now become the characteristics of the act that comes forth from us, because it's really God in us doing the action, and we are the veil of the operation of God in us. And so the act that comes out of this human will is divine, infinite, and eternal, because the will that operates in us is divine, infinite, and eternal. Now, back to the central theme of this talk, we were talking about how the prime motion of God, or the prime motion of God to make the corn grow in Kansas, the deer run in Wisconsin, the stars to shine in the heavens, and the angels and the saints to do whatever they do in heaven, and to receive the beatitude from God, that their happiness and joy in heaven. All of that comes from the divine will, and we in the divine will, with God, do with him what he does. So we too are giving prime motion to the corn to grow in Kansas, the deer to run in Wisconsin, and the stars to shine in the heavens, and the angels to operate as they do in heaven, and the saints to do what they do in heaven, and even to receive from God the beatitude and joy of heaven. So this lesson that we have today was designed to help you understand the operation of the human will fused in the divine will, and how God really operates in us. And so the will that produces our actions is divine, infinite, eternal. It's no longer merely a good human act or a bad human act. It takes on an infinitely different characteristic. God bless you. I'm Thomas Fay with the Center for the Divine Will.